very good to see you here. We're now looking forward. Things are starting to get sort of back in person. We're moving into the sort of whatever they define as the new normal, the next stage of this. But obviously we are still very much dependent on Welsh Government, and the way apprenticeships are developed and worked within Wales is very different from that in England. We're hearing a lot from the English context of development, of growth, of a lot of activity. And I know UCAS, for example, is pushing apprenticeships within England in a very strong way. Here in Wales, we're still very dependent on decisions that are being made by the Welsh Government and the limitations that they still want to put around the apprenticeship schemes. As a university, we will work very closely with the government, with HEFQ, with our college partners and others to do the best we can within the frameworks that we are given. And we will move quickly when we have the opportunity, if the Welsh Government chooses to expand the numbers and the subject areas that is possible around that. But it is something that it feels very much at times that we're living a sort of hand-to-mouth existence on this one, which isn't a position that we as a university want to be in, and I'm sure others not as well. So this afternoon really is an opportunity just to sort of touch base, to give you an update. Bernadette will sort of update where we are now and what things are looking like, and then an opportunity for a sort of broader conversation.
From where degree apprenticeships started from, where they're kind of going, what is happening in Wales. And the bigger picture, it all goes back to the introduction of the apprenticeship levy in 2017. So businesses with a staff salary of over 3 million were required to pay, I think it was 0.5% in an apprenticeship levy. And in England, that went into a training pot, and businesses were able to draw down that money to fund some of their training. A whole range of activities happen, and you may have heard words like trailblazer groups, on and off job training, endpoint assessments. This is all around the design of what a degree apprenticeship needs to look like, the content, how it's delivered. And the establishment of the Institute for Apprenticeship and Technical Education was a government body set up to oversee the delivery of apprenticeships in England. Welsh Government watched this agenda, but did things ever so slightly differently. And again, around the same time, they published the Aligning Apprenticeship Models and Needs of the Welsh Economy document, and I've given you the link there to have a look at it. They were looking to address skills shortages, as was the government in England, but to do it in quite a controlled and very focused way. They wanted to focus on skills that were needed in the Welsh economy particularly, whereas in England it's a fairly open system, it's very driven by providers and employers. They were very focused on specific skills areas. One of the major, in terms of degree apprenticeships, one of the major factors behind what they were trying to do was shifting a focus from apprenticeships away from level 1 and 2 up to level 3, so raising the levels. Level 3 would be the A-level equivalent. And with an emphasis on STEM subjects. They were looking to create a skills pathway, so a seamless pathway through school, through FE into HE. I'm not so sure how far that has been achieved. And improving the quality of access, widening access, Welsh language, opportunities to study through the medium of Welsh. The aim was to have 100,000 apprentices at all levels, not specifically degree, but part of that was introducing a degree apprenticeship framework. How they went about doing this, again, a bit of history. They introduced a new system for designing, developing degree apprenticeships, for reviewing the content. They introduced frameworks that sets out the specification for what the content should be, what the competency should be, and those were designed with employers and providers working together to design what should this degree apprenticeship look like. They introduced a pilot phase in 2018 and set a budget of 20 million aside to operate this pilot phase. So, we're now at the end of the pilot phase. The specific areas that they decided to introduce degree apprenticeships in our sectors was a digital sector, so that's the digital degree apprenticeships, and the engineering group. And those are the only two sectors where there are degree apprenticeships available in Wales, and they are undergraduate degree, not master's degrees like there are in England. Within each of those frameworks, there are 3 areas. Under the digital one, software engineering, data science, and cybersecurity. And in the engineering one, there are 5 different areas. And those have shifted over time as new sectors have come forward and said, we'd like a degree apprenticeship that's aligned to the engineering, and this is what it needs to look like. Here in Swansea, we run the software engineering, and we have something of 2 that fit under the advanced manufacturing area. The links in blue are the links to the frameworks that will give you some background information as to the content of what's expected in each of these degrees. So what is a degree apprenticeship? Well, I put a quotation there from the Quality Assurance Agency, so that's higher education's governing regulatory body. They describe it as a job that requires work in integrated learning, but more importantly, it's about learning. The workplace becomes a site for developing these skills, knowledge, and it's not just a site for applying them. Students are learning while they're at their place of work. So it's a program of study that combines work, university learning. The apprentices have to be employed. It leads to a degree at level 5, which we call a foundation degree, or level 6, which is a bachelor degree. It has to be aligned to a framework, as I previously mentioned, and that those have to be designed by the government. And it has to have flexibility so that there is on and off the job training. That's an expectation. Must be supported by a tripartite learning agreement. That's a requirement that there is an agreement between the apprentices themselves, their employer, and the provider. And most importantly, they are funded by the Welsh Government. The tuition fee is funded by the Welsh Government, but the funding comes to the providers to pay for the delivery. So for businesses, a degree apprenticeship provision and the funding, provided it fits within those 2 sectors, it's open to any business, any size of business, it doesn't particularly matter. New or existing employees, so our experience is that it is probably the majority are upskilling existing employees, but certainly not all of them. And businesses have to commit to that 20% off the job training, so it's 1 out of the 5 days, or however it happens to be delivered. For the apprentices, they of course need to meet the academic requirements for getting onto the degree, and there is some, we will publish those, but there is some flexibility around that, and we certainly recognize that we need to be looking at apprentices who possibly don't have all our published requirements like an undergraduate degree, but we do have some flexibility, and we've been able to support people through maths, their mathematical skills, and some other areas. So there is some flexibility. Quite vitally, the apprentices need to be working 51% of their time in Wales, and that's some of the difficulties for some of the larger employers that we work with, who've got employees that are moving necessarily across the country, possibly. In order to be part of the system that's operating here in Wales, is 51% of their time has to be in Wales. They have to be employed for a minimum of 30 hours a week. And they obviously have to be working in an area that will enable them to demonstrate the competencies that are required in order to complete the degree apprenticeship. Again, the on and off job training. In terms of the costs and the practicalities of all of this for businesses and for industry, the tuition fee is paid for by the Higher Education Funding Council in Wales. They are given a grant block of money from Welsh Government, and they distribute that to the providers who have to bid for places on a particular degree program. There is no employer financial contribution to the actual study in terms of tuition fees, but similarly there is no financial incentive for employers to take on an apprentice. Some of the apprenticeships at lower level, my understanding is there is some funding that's provided to support their apprentice. That isn't the case, and it's something we've been asked before about. And of course, the employers are provided to have to meet the apprentice wage as well. In terms of the delivery, as I said, it's flexible. We deliver ours. The few that we run are delivered in several different ways. Generally, it's a day a week. Some learning that goes on in the evening, depending on which course, and colleagues will explain how that works. And the degree apprenticeships that we run here at Swansea University, we deliver them with further education partners. We think it's a collaboration that works really well with this type of learning. In terms of the commitment that businesses will have to make, it's 3 to 3.25 years is the way our programs work. Again, back to the off-the-job learning, which can have an impact. There is a learning agreement required. We need our businesses to appoint a work-based mentor as part of the experience for the apprentice. There are progress reviews that are held every week, and we ask every 8 weeks, and we need the businesses to be involved in those. And that's to check the academic process, but also the well-being of the apprentice and how they're getting on. And there is an opportunity for the businesses that get involved with us to shape the content of these degrees. We are constantly reviewing them to make sure they are fit and they are meeting the skills needs that the businesses have. In terms of the pilot phase and what happened, just a bit of information on that. So the pilot phase is now completed, finished. We've moved on to, I guess they're calling it phase 1, phase 2, I'm not sure what they're calling it really. The pandemic kind of made the delivery and the planning a little more difficult, I would say. What Welsh Government have stated is a strong commitment to continue delivering degree apprenticeships in Wales. There's a commitment to try and introduce a methodology around the funding that's slightly more stable. So as Martin mentioned, at the moment, we as providers have to bid on an annual basis for places to start in September. And that process is not a difficult process, but the timing and the way it operates is quite delayed. So for example, for September starts this year, we still haven't been able to bid for funding. And we know that's quite difficult for employers who are looking potentially to hire in new staff. We can't confirm that the funding will be there. Now, they've been running for 4 years, 5 years, to be the 5th cohort I think we take in. The funding's always come through, but we just can't guarantee it. And we know that makes it difficult to plan, not only for ourselves, but for yourselves in your business. There's also a commitment to expand the provision to other sectors. The digital and the engineering, it is very limited. We have fed back, employers have fed back, there has been continuous lobbying. It's very narrow, particularly compared to what's going on in England. But in terms of what's being provided in England or Wales, it is quite narrow focus. And I also want to mention that the foundation degree and BSc in Applied Business Management, which I know colleagues will talk to you later, that's a higher apprenticeship. It's called a higher apprenticeship because it is not funded as a degree apprenticeship. The program, the BSc and where the students end up is exactly the same. They get a degree, but it's not considered a fundable degree apprenticeship. So the apprentices and the businesses that put students through this, they're paying for that. Now it is one of the sectors that we have said we think there's a real demand for this, we think there's a skill needs for it, and we have recommended and requested that the Welsh Government consider funding this. It really is, we're waiting to hear how they're going to expand. So in order to benefit, and you will mostly know all of this already because we have been running it, but you need to look at the frameworks, consider your own needs, your own training needs. I've given you some information on Welsh Government sites on where to find providers that will provide the degrees that you're looking for, how to find apprentices. We will be coming out to you later to sort of ask as we get to the process of bidding how many apprentices you'd like to send, possibly. We may ask for a letter of support, we may not need a letter of support, depends what Welsh Government would like us to do this time. And hopefully we will have confirmation of funding around June, July, and I'm optimistic that we will. Sometimes it's a little bit later than that, for a start date in September 2022. Just giving you some contact details there. I'm at the top and my colleagues who run the different programs. And that's really all I wanted to give you a bit of background. The only thing I wanted to just add is to date, my colleague looked at some numbers this morning, we put 400 apprentices, degree apprentices, through the various programs or have enrolled on the various programs that we run. And the apprentices that come through, I looked at the stats, 70% of them are getting first-class honors degrees. So the people that come through here are driven, they're committed, they're excellent students, and they bring value to the businesses that are employing them, and they certainly bring value to us as an institution.
So yes, I'm here to talk to you about the Applied Software Engineering Degree Apprenticeship. It's a full 3-year program, and I'm the program director of the Degree Apprenticeship. So, what is it? It's a full 3-year degree. We did start out as a foundation degree program back in 2013, but that was influenced by our industrial steering group, and then we kind of evolved into the 3-year degree apprenticeship program with our first cohorts graduating in 2019. The program itself is delivered for 1 day a week, but it's only from 1 till 8 p.m, and I'll come on to a little bit more of the details about that timeline later on. It is for 3 years, and obviously the student has to put in their own time as well and commitment to be able to complete the course. So how is it delivered? So the students study at this campus, Singleton campus, 1 day a week on the Wednesday from 1 till 8 p.m. So some employers do have their students to attend the workplace in the morning and then they come here for the evening. That is a very long day and it's very demanding on the students, but that's just how some employers work, I guess. The way that it's delivered is mostly through lectures, seminars, lab work and discussions. So on your right, my left, you can see a picture here of, it's actually 2 of the classes. The classes are quite small, there's around 30 per class, so you have a really good individual approach to each student. You get to know the students on an individual basis. And the discussions in the classroom are much more, I would say, in-depth than the standard undergraduate programs, just because the experience and the range of experience that the students have. There is a large element of self-study, so whilst we do say that the 1 till 8 is the only commitment from the employer, it's not the only commitment from the student. The student does have to complete coursework, revise, I don't know, any additional work Luke can come up with. He's one of our students at the moment. And that does take a lot of extra time and commitment from the student themselves. I've already mentioned the coursework, so this is where they would complete the tasks for each top module, and we'll talk about a module breakdown in a moment. There's also work-based portfolio tasks, so this is where the workplace come in, and this is also where Gower College are here to help us. And each module will have an individual work-based portfolio task accompanying the module, and the purpose of this is to apply your knowledge into the workplace. So whilst the student has to complete the module and understand the knowledge and theory within the module, they also have to do the workplace task. The main thing is that the students must manage their own time, and as Bernadette said earlier on, the students that we get in the programme are really committed to the programme and they often achieve really good results. So this is kind of the typical structure of the breakdown, I should say, of the day. So we start at 1 p.m. sharp with, they do 2 modules per term. So we have lecture 1 from module A, then they have a little 10-minute gap, and then we have lecture 1 from module B. Then we go back to module A for lecture 2, and then module B for lecture 2. Then they have an hour lunch break, followed by 2 hours of labs. So the labs actually make up part of the module marks, but they are a dedicated session that the students will complete, work related to what they've learned that day. So throughout this day as well, they obviously get the opportunity to interact with any lecturers, ask any questions throughout the lectures as well. And this break, I would say, is quite flexible. The students quite often start their labs much earlier, and as long as they finished and signed off, they could leave before 8. Although we do aim for the labs to take the 2 full hours. So this year is probably very small for everyone to see at the back, but this is a kind of typical term structure. So you can see we've split it into 3 trimesters, and this was advised by our industrial steering board. So the typical undergraduate programme only has 2 semesters. So we have kind of the winter one and the summer one, followed by exams. But obviously the workplace doesn't have a summer break, and so this is how we were able to fit a 3-year degree into actually only 3 years with 1 day a week in university. So it is very demanding, and all of the text columns that you can see, text rows you can see in these columns are actual deadlines. So usually after the first 2 weeks of semester, the students have a deadline every other week, I would say. We've also broken down the tests, so instead of 1 exam at the end, we found that the students preferred 2 tests. So they have a midterm roughly halfway through, and then the end terms at the end. And you can see alongside then they have their work-based portfolios. So these are handed out usually in week 2, and then they're due in week 11. So they get 10 weeks to complete the 2 work-based portfolio tasks. They do get the breaks in between, so you can see they have 3 to 4 weeks break for Christmas, 3 weeks for Easter, and then a longer summer break. The modules themselves, so this is year 1, year 2, year 3. And I would say that the modules have a very big range. So the first 2 years are committed to kind of developing the key skills that you need for a software engineer. And then the 3rd year, focus on more specific areas that the students might want to go into after they graduate. So just taking 1st year, for example, you can see we have the 3 trimesters, and there's 2 modules in each trimester. So the first term they look at Programming 1 and Discrete Maths. So both programming modules focus on teaching the students Java, and we start right from the start, so even if they don't have any prior knowledge, that's absolutely fine. Discrete Maths looks more at the problem-solving aspect of computer science, so being able to break down problems, and also being able to write down how your program works, but in good English and good mathematical notation. Spring then, we got Programming 2 and Computer Science Concepts, so you kind of look at how a computer works, any of the key concepts in the history of computer science. And in the summer we move to software development and professional issues. But you can see right around the outside we've got these work-based portfolio tasks. So as I mentioned, each of these modules would have a specific task for the work-based portfolio. I won't go through year 2 and year 3, but there is a module overview leaflet at the front here if you would like to pick one up, and that has more details on each module itself. So as I mentioned, this is a typical module breakdown, and they do vary slightly, but typically a student would expect 2 courseworks from each module, 2 tests, and the labs. So the labs they will do with us each week. If they don't manage to complete those labs in the lab time, then they would be expected to go home and finish them before the next week. They should be relatively small tasks that they can complete though on the day. So the only kind of extra commitment from the student required is to complete these 2 tasks at home and then to revise for these 2 tests. So I've mentioned the work-based portfolio, but there's also a 3rd year project. So I'll just go over the two of them now. But these are the main parts where it allows the students the chance to apply their knowledge into the workplace. So there's 1 per module for the work-based portfolio, and they have 10 weeks to complete, and it must be in the context of the business. Now we have had some issues in the past, for example, when the students are studying computer security, that they don't want to necessarily exploit or divulge the security bad points of their business. And so what we do there is we just get them to think about their business from a kind of an outsider aspect and then reflect on it rather than give us any specific details. So these are just some further examples. They might be asked to report on a certain topic, develop a small piece of software, design a database, or analyse current processes. They are all small 10-week projects, and whilst there would be some benefit to the company for these projects, the benefit might be quite small because they're so short. The 3rd year project, however, is a full year project, and this provides the student the opportunity to give back to the workplace. So there's 2 modules that make up this 3rd year project, one that we call the journey module and then one that we call the write-up module. So the journey is all about what they're developing, how they're going to approach it, and then a kind of progress report on what they've done. And that gives us the opportunity to see if they will be on track to complete their dissertation on time. And then the write-up is obviously the dissertation and a video that shows how their product works. So it is software engineering, so they do have to build a piece of software for their final year project. And we have had many success stories in this area. So one student in particular, I think they said that they managed to recuperate £450,000 back from the business just for developing a piece of software that tracks certain expenditures. So we're almost at the end, but obviously we offer the students lots of support. So all of the resources are available on our learning platform, so this would include any slides, our coursework materials, or extra materials that we give to the students. We use Canvas. We also have discussion boards and Discord. So I don't know if many people use Discord, but it's basically kind of a social media channel, but for text or video or audio communications. And we developed this during the pandemic, and it was mainly because we felt that the sense of community was lost by not having the face-to-face contact. And so Discord really brought that back. And even though we've now returned to in-person teaching, Discord is still really lively, and the students kind of don't just use it for workplace, but also general contact, so it's really an opportunity for them to network. Our lecturing team, we have a committed team of staff for the Degree Apprenticeship programme, so their kind of, I wouldn't say their sole purpose is to do the Degree Apprenticeship, but they certainly focus on the Degree Apprenticeship. So from Monday to Friday, They're usually available for office hours, so we have dedicated hours where the students can drop into our Zoom session or drop into campus. Obviously, we understand the students are employed, and so our Zoom sessions we try to schedule for either after hours or during kind of the lunch breaks. We're also available via email, I'd say Discord, anything as well. As well as the lecturing staff, we also have Gower College who support with the work-based portfolios. So Adrian is our main liaison between the businesses and the students in the first and second years. And then in the third year, you get an academic mentor to work on your third year project with you. This is more to guide you in kind of the deliverables. So what would you put into a specification report? How would you write it? And so on. And then finally, as Bernadette mentioned, you do need a workplace mentor, and the main purpose of this mentor is just to be able to support and guide the student through the process, but also be able to provide any context information when they need it. So if they're struggling to understand why discrete maths is useful in the workplace, then the workplace mentor should be able to do this for them. This is the last slide, so just a little bit about the application process. There's a short application form to complete. And once they've completed that, then we usually invite them to an interview session where we would tell the students all of the information we've told you, so they know exactly what they're signing up for. We do go into a little bit more depth on the modules. And then after this information session, it's followed by an aptitude test and a short interview. We usually tell the students the same week if they're successful or not, or if, for example, the companies are putting students forward, we would advise the companies then which students we think would be suitable or more suitable than others, so that they can make a final decision. We conduct both the interview sessions online or in person, and it can be for individuals or small groups per employer. And now I'm done, so I'm going to hand over to engineering.
So yeah, I'm going to talk about the degree apprenticeships and manufacturing engineering. Chris Ann will never miss an opportunity to promote the School of Engineering. So there's some details here. Top universities for engineering, research-led university, best university for engineering in Wales. We've got 150 staff, support staff. I say we've got a big track record, obviously don't want to spend too much time there. I love the Swansea University motto, technical skills bereft without culture. So in the modules that I teach in this degree scheme, I teach robotics. I'm constantly telling my students to read things like Asimov and things like reading, rather than just all the technical stuff about robotics, read some of the fiction and the cultural side of things. So it's constantly trying to promote that sort of thing. So in our degree schemes, we've got fully accredited undergraduate degree schemes and apprentice degree schemes in aerospace, chemical, civil, electrical, environmental, all the rest there. We focus on the aerospace and the manufacturing. So when I say manufacturing, it's more like mechanical engineering. We've just gone through our second accreditation, and we passed with flying colours, which is a great achievement. So I've got some of the facilities. We've got a lot more than this, but I've chosen these here, highlighting these here, because we do use all of this equipment for the students. So all of my students, they're based up in North Wales, and they come down and they spend extensive weeks where the companies let them out for the week, and they come down and they use a lot of this equipment. And also our partner college, Coleg Cambria up in North Wales, in Deeside, they're constantly investing in new equipment. In fact, they just bought now a state-of-the-art robotics lab, so they're not just reliant on Swansea University's robotics facilities. But yeah, you can see some of the equipment that we use there. Some of the companies, not necessarily the companies that are involved in the degree apprenticeships, but some of the companies we work with in terms of mechanical. There's some really impressive companies there. Some of them are apprentices on our degree schemes. And there's the aerospace. The focus of the degree is on Airbus. So as you can imagine, it's right next to the wing manufacturer factories in North Wales. So most of our apprentices tend to be from Airbus. And in fact, the Airbus degree scheme was already set up, the degree scheme was set up just for Airbus students, but it's become so attractive to other companies within the region that you can see that a lot more of them are asking to join, and finding that the degree scheme meets their needs as well. So, and of course we've got Raytheon and recently Toyota on automotive. This year we've got students from JCB. So yeah, the portfolio of companies coming to join these degree schemes is getting wider. So the degree apprenticeship, so it's a BEng, part of the Airbus Higher Apprenticeship programme, but now extended for other companies. Delivered in partnership with College Cambria. It's 3 years of the BEng completion, so it's a very intense, similar to the previous speaker's sort of format. Our day is 8 o'clock till about 5:30, so it's a long day. And a lot of the student companies then, they let them work on projects in the Friday morning. So it's very intense, and we have some real big timetabling challenges, but it does work. Majority of the study is at College Cambria. In fact, I'd say for the first year, it's all in College Cambria. College Cambria campus, some work-based learning and some intensive activity at Swansea University, as I mentioned. The recruitment and admissions is done by the companies, so we don't have any say in the company, who goes on the courses. Well, not any say, we do have some say. We just have to make sure that they have the relevant qualifications. But to get onto an apprenticeship with Airbus, these students would have been probably going to the bigger universities in the UK anyway. So yeah, it's they're very vigorous in their selection of the students they take on. But entry requirements at least be in A-level maths and physics. The benefits are pretty obvious. They get a full-time degree apprenticeship, all their course fees are paid for, and they get a degree at the end of it. It's a very intense 3 years, and a lot of students probably miss out in the classic student experience, but they are in full employment at the end. The degree programme is matching the needs of employment, and the other positive that we have, as the previous speaker mentioned, smaller group sizes. So at the moment it's growing every year, but normally it's about 30 to 35 students. So the ability for us to do this degree in 3 years is because we have a lot of face-to-face, we have a lot of coaching, we have a lot of one-to-one time with the students, and a lot of almost like full-time mentorship really. So that's good, and it's really good for the staff who deliver on it, because we get a lot of connections with the students. The first year, so I don't want to go into it too much, but you can see work-based learning, engineering analysis, business management, aerospace manufacturing methods, materials and design, and computer-aided engineering. So what I noticed about that is quite interesting is that we check there, because it is an engineering degree, we check on the first year whether the students are able to deal with the mathematics that go into the second and third year. So normally, by this first year, because the engineering analysis, which is very computationally heavy, we find out which students probably need a little bit of extra help with the mathematics. So we have then maths cafes and things like this to support them. I should add as well, not all the students are potentially A-levels going into degree schemes, universities. Some of them are what they call blue-collar workers. So when they've recognised talent on the shop floor and they've actually just picked them and said, okay, we'd like you to be sort of future management or future engineering leadership. So they pick the blue-collar workers, and some of those students most of those students tend to have the best projects, so they're exceptional students. So, but always our concern was that because they haven't come through the traditional A-level route, that their mathematics might not be as good as we'd like. So the first year helps them with this. Second year, and here you can see then the project, which is a design-based project, which is linked to their workplace. Engine analysis, flight dynamics, advanced manufacture, structures and stress analysis, and again, this is where the mathematics comes in, and by the time they get to second year, by the time they start this module, that they're up to speed with what we expect. And then we've got the third year, which is exclusively Swansea University staff. So this matches every module that we actually run at the campus for full-time students. The research project is what I lead, and the robotics is the other one I lead. The project itself, similar to the previous slides, it's a work-based project. Airbus or Raytheon or JCB, they decide what they'd like to have researched, and the students spend almost a full year then doing that project. and it's fascinating. It's full of challenges. During COVID, it was very difficult because all Airbus was pretty much furloughed. Other students went on to 12-hour shifts, so it was quite challenging. Other challenges have been where I think I had 6 students who were working on projects in the A380, and then Airbus decided to stop production of the A380. So, they had to find new projects very quickly because every piece of work was cut on that. So, yeah, quite challenging. So I'll just briefly have a couple of slides on what I think are the successes. So student outcomes, as mentioned by Bernadette, a large number of students get firsts. It's totally surprising when I joined the degree that because they're working full-time, but they can still achieve such high marks, and it's testament to I suppose Airbus recruitment, I suppose. But yeah. External examiners and accreditors have always found our degrees to be very challenging, but rewarding and high quality. So one of the ways we achieve this high quality is regular industrial liaison meetings, committee meetings. So we have lots of discussions with the companies. Sometimes sometimes like a fortnightly thing where someone from Airbus or Raytheon say, have you considered doing this? So we work with them, and we adapt with them whatever changes they have within their companies, and we try to adapt that to what we actually deliver. So the industrial liaison meetings are really important to steer in both ways. So new developments in academia, and also then new developments within the companies. We also have regular student meetings, constantly have student meetings to work out whether their workloads are right and whether they're struggling or falling behind. And then normally it's just a very honest discussion because we have that we know each other by name, so it allows us to have that system. And again, I've put 2 points here on the industrial-based projects. Really good for us as a university because we get to find out what industry finds important in terms of what they're researching, what they're working on, what they're developing. So, we've got, a dozen lecturers that are really finding out what's critical to industry. And then for the students and then the mentors, the actual industrial mentors who are mentoring the students, they get to see how maybe academia would approach these projects and maybe structure the project in a way that would be counterintuitive to a traditional method of tackling an engineering challenge. So they're really interesting for us.
Okay, my name's Alan Price. I'm the Programme Director for this Applied Business Management degree and Foundation degree. I came with my colleague, my boss, Karina. She can answer all the difficult questions. Okay. We started, when they were designing the course, I don't want to repeat, it could become a bit repetitive because there are similarities between the different courses you've seen now. We started off by asking about the kind of questions that industry might like to ask. I think the kind of challenges that people in industry are facing these days. So we're constantly talking to people who say, do you need to upskill your team? And the answer is always, yes, it's a challenge within the workplace. I'll come back to these notes as well. Are you struggling to retain exceptional staff? We just talked about that now before while we were eating lunch. Do you want to attract the best talent? How easy is it to attract the best talent? It's not an easy thing to do these days. And do you want to develop your talent but can't afford to have them away from the workplace? So the course was designed around these challenges. So one more question, what about succession planning and where the next generation of leaders come from? So with those questions in mind, we started thinking about, right, okay, what should this degree look like? What modules do we teach within the School of Management that are particularly applicable to this kind of learning? How can we mould them to the situation? So on this degree, we've got the question, the statement there as if I was talking directly to industry. Your employees will receive first-class education that's designed around your business needs. Okay, equipped to deal with a wide range of topics, including HR, marketing, supply chain, finance, the usual sort of things you need to deal with. We spoke to Airbus initially, because we worked closely with Airbus at the start of this whole programme, and through our industrial liaison committee, we call it a steering committee with us, they gave us their input, what they felt was important, what direction we needed to focus on. Again, retaining exceptional staff is difficult, so it's an obvious winner for you, isn't it, as an employer? If you've got an employee who feels sort of valued and they're going to benefit from this training program, they're more likely to stay with you. They're more likely to feel they're getting somewhere in their career. I would say anyway. So, attracting the best talent. Well, offering new employees a place on an applied business management degree provides you a cost-effective way to differentiate your package from the competition. Okay, so there are lots of courses out there, lots of training packages, lots of training programs, but not many of them offer this applied business management degree. Again, we've worked closely with industry. We've had to take a blended learning approach because of the pandemic. We had an element of that beforehand, but we had to ramp it up. In a sense, we were actually lucky when the pandemic hit that we had already had some experience with blended learning approaches. So it wasn't a huge... College Cambria handled it very, very well, didn't they? They were able to adapt very quickly. Funnily enough, though, and we thought that Airbus was very happy with what we did. And we thought at the end, as things relaxed and the pandemic came to an end, we thought, well, we can actually increase the amount of online teaching, the blended learning approach. And Airbus came back and said, no, we'd rather they're in the classroom. We prefer them in the classroom. So we've kind of scaled that back again. But it's a blended learning approach. Okay, but the approach means that students only need 26 half days out of the workplace for academic year. Okay. One of the modules that we changed. So if you look, these are the sectors that we've had apprentices from, students from. Aerospace is obviously Airbus. We've had some pre-muck or Primark apprentices. Quite a few from hospitality. We've got one of our star students at the moment from recruitment. So there's from a range of sectors. And through the Industrial Liaison Committee, we kind of conversations back and forth. We decided to drop one of the modules, and we brought in a leadership module. And that was largely because of Airbus. Airbus said, this is great, you've done a lot of project management work, but we really want a leadership module, because these are future leaders of Airbus, which is positive for us, hopefully. So those are the questions we asked when we put the program together. It's designed to meet the needs of business. It's flexible. It suits all sectors. We're currently delivering programs to our 5th cohort at College Cambria, so we've had 2 graduating classes of the actual business degree, more of the foundation degree. I can't math that. But it's all about their future careers within the organisations they work in. Because of the way the work is structured, the way the course is structured, it's sort of preparing them for advancement in their careers within that particular organisation. Okay, we're hoping to take it all Pan Wales from September 22, subject to demand, obviously. So the programme for the rest of Wales will run from our Swansea University School of Management. Okay, some of the modules that we look at, typically, as you'd expect, I'm pretty certain. Finance, accounting and analytics, leadership, marketing, business, project management. What we find within certain of these modules is that there is quite a lot of crossover, and the employers are very keen on certain subject areas. So, for example, lean manufacturing. Currently, supply chain is everything, isn't it? Whichever sector you're in, supply chain seems to be in demand. As I say, lectures, seminars, interactive tutorials, speakers, workshops. Assessments are undertaken through a variety of different ways, including self-reflective reports, with an accompanying portfolio of evidence, projects and presentations. I'll come back to that in a second. Learning outcomes for each module designed around academic learning, okay, and practical application. Right. Two of the learning outcomes are personally and professionally developed between the student, their academic mentor, and their employer mentor. Okay, so the outcomes form part of the learning contract, provide the basis for course curriculum assessment, which is the reason I brought Karina. because she can explain to me, she can explain to you all the thinking behind the learning contract when we come to the question answers. Okay, so the idea is that we complement the workplace activities. Some of the modules: finance, marketing, human resources and operations in year 1. Year 2, business management, operations management part 2, organisational project, leadership. And then year 3, business management, project management, delivery and organisational project. So you can see there are lots of project related elements to this programme. Okay, so it's getting a bit repetitive there, but duration 3 years, 2 years for the foundation degree, 1 year for the BSc. At least 3 grade Bs in A level were our entry requirements. Funnily enough, I discovered that those were our requirements, but Airbus actually only required two A levels at grade B, one of which must be business studies. So we were at the open day at the Broughton plant, and a parent came to us and said, "How come they've got different entry requirements to you?" And I thought theirs were higher than ours. It turned out ours were higher than theirs, but they said, "No, that's the minimum." As it happens, I think all their recruits are sort of 4 or 5 A levels, grade A. They're very, very good students. Okay, there's some links for you to have a look at. They'll take you to, the top 2 take you to Swansea University pages, and the bottom 2 to College Cambridge pages. All the information you need there, and our contact details if you want to speak to us.